Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Colthurst back again with another logic tutorial. Today we are going to be covering the subject of how to create an ice attack that will freeze an enemy. There will be a little bit of visual funness as well. As in, we will have to make the visuals for the ice. So I'm going to be using Rule Flex and Paint Flex. Make them waxy so they're kind of, all one color. A little scattering, a lot of impasto, and stretch them a bit. Set them to 5,000, I think. Maybe a little bit less. 2,500. Maybe take off the scattering, that doesn't quite work. Let's try 500. Wait, that might work better. Yeah, I think that's a good ice. You also might change the fleck type to a splat. Or maybe a circle. Hexagon might work. Yeah, that looks very icy, I think. Add a little glow as well. Except don't make it emit glow. And we'll group these together just in case we want to add new effects. Make them larger by increasing the looseness. Maybe add a slight blue tinge as well. And make it so the glow is constant. Now we're going to add some little, blown snowflakes or whatever you might want to call them, I guess. Take off the glow, set them to waxy, and maybe decrease this a little bit. Set to 5,000, I believe. take the trail length down to 0, set it to pulse, and loop. Could make them bigger so they're more visible, and add more of them. That doesn't hurt. Decrease the spread a bit. Take down the stretch too. Increase the copies a bit. There, I think that's a good ice attack. I might take down the stretch a bit. Alright, I think that's what we're gonna need. Now just put it in here with the puppet. We're not gonna be able to aim this thing up and down, so we won't really need it to be outside the puppet's group, really. And we'll add a quick little attack. And as usual, we're going to be using all the traits of the trade, you know. The good old-fashioned node with a NOT gate plugged into it, and a timeline with a switch set to play once so that it won't loop. If you've watched a lot of our videos, you're probably familiar with this by now, but I like to go over it every single time because I think it's very important to preventing instantaneous playback until the duration of the move has expired or whatever. We're going to use triangle as the example here. Basically, triangle will trigger the move from the controller sensor. I'm also going to set it so that we remove the depossession aspect, and we set it to force possession, so we'll just be instantaneously in it. We're going to use keyframes, but we could easily also use action recorders, which are more thermo-effective. It's just I find it takes more time to set them up. Also, let's briefly make this invisible so that we can see what we're doing. We're going to do this similar to how we made the fire attack, where he charges it up. Let's turn the studio lighting on so the glow won't interrupt us much. We might move the ice forward a bit. And add a few jittering frames to give the impression that he's, you know, really into it, really firing away. That's good. Now we're going to unhide our effect. Scope in once and move it forward a bit. Stamp out a keyframe right here. Open up the tweak menu with L1 in square. Set endpoint to maximum with the keyframe. Then press stop recording and pull this back, which will set the endpoint to 0%. And the keyframe, you know, now that you've recorded it at 100%, will simply activate that. Set this to linear blend. And if I did this correctly, it should create our little ice attack. We might reposition it again because it's lower down, I think. Good. We are also going to take an action recorder and set it to keyframe mode. Turn off the puppet interface. Oops, something forgot to reverse this. Also, it's good to use action recorders outside of timelines because there's some weird glitches that happen. But just turn off the poses and the puppet interface, which will make it so the puppet can't move while he's performing this. If you ever want a video on auto-targeting, I can also show you how to do that. Like if you want the puppet to point toward the enemy while he's firing the move, that's something we could cover on another, you know, later date. Anyway, next thing that we need to do is take out a trigger zone, put it here on the ice attack, make it square. You could make it any shape depending on what the move is. I'm going to make it a square because it's just easier. And this is going to act as our hitbox. It's going to be set to tag. We're going to call this tag freeze. So during that duration it will freeze, you know, anything that has that tag on it. Which our enemy is about to have a tag labeled freeze. We'll call this status effect. If you want to see a lot about status effects, if you take a little peruse over my logic for Godzilla GR, I have quite a bit of status effects in there. But we're going to take out a timeline, set it to loop. Put down a microchip on it. And on here we're going to set the tag labeled freeze. Now, the purpose of the timeline with loop is so that we can shut it off later. It serves a different purpose later on. In more complicated logic sets, it may not be so useful in this particular, thing, but I thought I'd include it. Then we have a node. And the node has the age-old configuration of a NOT gate hooked up to its power, and the node hooked up to the power of a timeline set to play once. And I'm sure you know where we're going from here. We're going to put a switch on this timeline. I think we'll have a long duration. I mean, he is frozen after all. And he won't be able to be refrozen until the end of this is done playing, so, until this entire duration is done. You might label it frozen, so you could remember what this, does. Let's make sure we labeled freeze properly. And might want to put it a little bit lower so it's easier to trigger. It has to be within that zone that I demonstrated earlier. And we'll add a little pose symbolizing his frozen state. You don't have to do this, you could actually just freeze him solid in whatever his basic pose is, but I figured I'd do this just, We're also going to add certain effects to make it look as if he's frozen. For instance, we're going to use a text displayer. Remove the opacity of the text, of course. Set it to in-scene and sticker mode. We're also going to modify the depth. And set it so that it allows rotation. But basically, all this is going to do is make him a little frozen. Little frozen looking. You can change the color of the cubes to whatever you want, really. Anything that you think looks frozen, you can apply. We're going to use two of them so that we kind of cover both angles, back and front. There will be that little crevice in between, but, I suppose you could use three. Let me try. It might not be so hard just to use three on him. If you had a lot of enemies on screen, it might be difficult, to maintain all of these different things at once, but I think we're in a position where we can actually afford to fully freeze him. Alright. Oh, also, let's add a little freeze sound effect. Could call it ice. Let's see what we get with ice. We'll just use this. Set it to sustain, make it really fast. That should work. And we'll make this the frozen sound effect. It's a bit extravagant. I might use something more simple, but I think it'll work. Alright, let's go over and give him a piece of our mind. And there he is, frozen before your very eyes. He can still be moved, of course. If you want to make him a little bit more still or whatever, and if you wanted to freeze him in midair, I don't really know what would do that in most cases, because physics-wise it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to be frozen in midair, but you could actually freeze him in midair if you wanted to. So just turn off his puppet interface so he can't move, turn off his procedural animations, and as a special option, if you wanted to freeze him in midair, just simply turn off his movable status and make him immovable. There are a few games where you're allowed to freeze things in midair. I guess maybe there's an excuse, maybe temporal, distortion, something like that. But all that's going to do is just make it so that he can't really, I suppose if you turn off movability, it would also make him so that you can't move him out of place. So maybe we'll put that on just so. Just be aware that if he's in the air and you do this, he will actually be frozen in midair. Ah, we missed. Let's try again. And as you see, we can't really move him at all. In fact, we can't even interface with him. But yeah, there's a simple way to create an ice attack and freeze him for a certain amount of time before he's unfrozen. You could even keep him permanently frozen if you so wish. For instance, if you wanted to, you could do away with this and just have it so that this is set to sustain, pull it back a bit, and he'll be permanently frozen. Never to move again. Although, having him in the scene could be a bit costly, so you might want to have a way for him to die eventually. But I'm just going to leave that in there as a possible option in case you want to freeze something permanently. Maybe you have a mechanic where you freeze and unfreeze enemies to get to solve a puzzle or something. Just use your mind and your creativity as it was intended. But that's all for now. Here are the names of all of our lovely cult supporters. Many thanks to all of you. If you'd like to get your name in those credits, check the link in the description and head over to our Ko-fi. You can become a cultist neophyte to become credited at the end of our video, or you can become an acolyte to gain early access to videos in addition to credit. Now, if you aren't in the mood for membership, you can always leave a one-time tip. If you enjoyed this video and are not already subscribed, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. And maybe give us a quick like, both options are free. Also, don't forget to ring the notification bell so you will always be notified when new videos come out. If you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions, leave them in the comments section. Or if you just want to let out your pent-up rage, give us some smack talk. Until next time, goodbye.